And I'll go ahead and get started. So hopefully, Julius, you may want to tell Mark to log off and log back on, maybe.
Okay.
Call-in number, but I can give you my number. I'll send you my number, Julius.
Okay.
Give Mark my number too. So welcome, everybody. This is my first time moderating a panel discussion for this special interest group. And today we'll be talking about learning management. Helping me in the chat window, we'll have Julie Su, who's the chair of this Teaching with Technology special interest group, and our past chair also, Mike Trong, who will be picking out questions from the chat window there. So looks like Mark has got some iPhone issues, so he's working on it, so we'll see. This, by the way, SIG has a website, so we encourage you to go to our WordPress site, which is sigtwt.wordpress.com. Please join us there. We'll be announcing all the things that we do, and we'd love to keep you in the loop about any events that we're offering like this. So we had kind of a brainstorming session for lots of different topics that we all were excited about at the Pod Network conference, and we hope to address, if not all, then many of those topics during web events like this. So a few housekeeping things. I have it automatically configured to where your microphones are muted and your cameras are off to prevent interference. So it shouldn't be a problem, but just in case some crazy thing happens to where you do have access to your microphone and your camera, if you could mute them just to prevent background noise, we'd really appreciate it. Instead, use the chat window. So go to the chat window now and go ahead and see if you can discover where the chat window is and type a hello. If you want to introduce yourself, say what institution you're from and what you do there. That would be awesome. We'll have a record of the chat as well, and we'll share that with you at a later date. So put your questions there, and Mike and Julius will be fishing out your questions to ask our esteemed panelists at the end of the event. Oh, there's some feedback. I felt that one in my filling. All right, so we're recording this, and we'll let you know when the recording is available at the end. So I wanted to introduce our panelists to you. So our first is Dr. Wendi Kappers. She's program chair of the MS in Information Security and Assurance program at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. She's a course award winner, instructional designer, and computer engineer, whose research focuses include teaching with technology and gender inclusivity. Platforms include eCollege, WebCT Vista, Blackboard, and now Canvas. Her panel participation will reflect upon her 2014-15 Blackboard to Canvas committee involvement and implementation evaluation results, as well as design best practices in LMS faculty development training. Our second panelist is Mark Ullman. Mark is Associate Director of the Center for Academic Technologies at CSU Monterey Bay. He led their Moodle pilot in 05-06 and part of subsequent CSU Moodle Revolt. That sounds exciting. His bio is the only open-ended ellipsis, we don't know what's going to happen, ... So I love this bio. That was in 2007. From 2008 to 2014, they hosted Moodle for 2 community colleges, a graduate school, and 2 local high schools. With the consolidation of the LMS environment and parallel explosion of publisher and free market tools and services, what does a post-LMS world bring? And what does that look like in the age of data requirements, accessibility, publisher-controlled content, content ownership, and you name it? All right. So, and our third panelist is Elspeth McCullough, instructional designer at Florida Gulf Coast University. She's worked in the field of distance ed for over 15 years, designing, creating, developing informal and formal learning solutions to meet faculty needs and organizational needs. She's analyzed and selected appropriate instructional strategies and technologies to maximize learning experience and development over 100 e-learning courses. Wow. She led a transition from Blackboard to Angel at a community college and a migration from Angel to Canvas at a university. She'll reflect on the role of the instructional designers in helping maintain a focus on teaching and learning throughout such migrations. It's not all about clicking. There's some teaching and learning in there. So we're going to move right along. Welcome, panelists. We're going to move right along to question 1. I'll pose a question, and I'll turn to our panelists in a certain order. The order will change for each question, so all 3 will have an opportunity to chime in with answers. They, like the Republican debates, have been fed these questions ahead of time. So first of all, what particular faculty development challenges did you face going into migration, and how did you address those challenges? Wendi, you want to kick us off with that?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you for my invite to this panel. I feel honored. I'm sure that I share many of the same sentiments as other people who have gone through migrations. The challenges that we always face are change. I mean, change is never an easy thing to go through, but I've been on a panel from Angel to Blackboard to WebCT Vista. But I must say, in this case, the challenges were very minimized by the acceptance of Canvas and the Canvas help. So the only changes that we really were experiencing from my university's perspective is just the daunting need to train faculty in a very quick manner. We had only 1 year in our rollout on our transition, so we used many pilots. So the challenges, again, were minimum, but it was just the sheer volume of people to get trained.
All right. Mark, are you there?
I am here.
All right. We have audio from Mark. All right. You're up next, sir.
You give me 1 second. I'm having to use multiple devices here between to my iPhone computer. I think the biggest thing that we encountered was really more of a timing issue, similar to where Wendi went and what Wendi was speaking to, the idea that there weren't a lot of problems because there was substantial buy-in in advance, but we spent a better part of 1.5 years realizing that our LMS was not where we wanted it to be. And so we gradually went out and we started with a pilot. We started with 2-3 faculty that we actually worked with. And unbeknownst to us, after 6 months, we said, where do these other 15 faculty come from? And how did they get into our pilot system? And then from there, it actually coincided well with the California state system RFP process for evaluating LMSes, and where we were going along with some of the accessibility issues given at that time, it actually became less of a challenge. And it became, as Wendi mentioned too, more of a heavy lifting exercise. How do we move everybody from point A to point B without leaving anybody behind?
Excellent, thank you. And our third panelist, Elspeth, how would you answer this question?
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. I echo what Mark and Wendi have said, but I think our biggest challenge was that we have a tiny staff, and a lot of instructors, and probably not as many adjuncts as some institutions, but a lot of adjuncts. And so, but my thinking is that you don't really want students to be burdened with 2 LMSs for very long. So we did a very quick rollout. We did a pilot group in the spring. We spent 1.5 years choosing the system, but then we did a pilot group of 10 faculty in the spring. So it was, less than 300 students impacted, and then we rolled it out in the summer. And so the challenge really was to get faculty there in time, and for faculty who were teaching online in the summer, it was hard. I mean, we didn't start training the rest of the faculty until February, so it was a crunch. I think it's a better way to do it, to not have a long lapsing rollout. I think time and people.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move on to our next question, and that is, what were the supportive measures undertaken by institutions in migration? So those could be coming from teaching and learning centers, from online instruction areas, or from IT departments. What were those measures that they undertook? Elspeth, do you want to start us off there?
Sure, George. Well, I think that these things should be fun, and so we undertook to have a lot of fun. We got a lot of pirate hats for some reason. We had them at the dollar store. We had a big kickoff, and it was surprising because 150 people came to it, which is a lot of people for anything. We had food. I did some talking to people for Canvas, and I made them pay me in T-shirts. So we had a lot of things to give away.
Nice.
We made a board game. We made it fun. You know, I posted on Facebook and Twitter every day what was going on, and sort of created funness around it, because it sucks to change, like Wendy says. Like, you don't want to. However, it's such a great opportunity for training, retraining, and redesigning that we wanted to get people interested in voluntarily doing more. And our training wasn't required, but we made probably the single best choice we made was to have our structured training and then to have informal every Friday. And that was outstanding, because really we could customize to what the users needed.
Excellent. Mark?
So it's interesting that I like the pirate hat. I like that. We did T-shirts and we did swag. So our initial groups, you know, interestingly enough, I direct academic technology. I am both IT, academic technology, instructional design, a certain element of a learning center, in addition to our teaching and learning center. So it was a fairly comprehensive process for us. And so our early adopters, we paid them good money to become evangelists. And they were our risk takers. We actually ended up doing a 30-minute TV show for the campus, and we had faculty from different disciplines, as well as the librarians and instructional designers, talking about why we were making the move. And so again, if you have the time, you can have a much more organized and process. So it's, we're the Center for Academic Technologies here at CSUMB. So our acronym is, of course, CAT, which gives us a wealth of fun things that we can do, not the least of which is herding cats. And so it actually worked out fairly well over the long run. And we had support from the Academic Senate. We had support from our faculty advisory groups, which were that report to the Academic Senate. So the initial move was actually much more painless than it could have been. Now, I can't speak necessarily to the next move, but that's a different conversation, because times have radically shifted between then and now.
Excellent. Thank you. And Wendy?
I am, like the others in the panel, we tried to make this fun. Obviously change hurts in some respect, but once you get over that hurdle, everybody finds how appreciative they are. But we did infomercials in which we asked for pilots. Obviously, it was in a shorter period of time, from October to June, because our Blackboard contract had ended. So we definitely had a firm cutoff date. There was no going back. So we did the food. We had the kickoff meeting. We had T-shirts where we have, the Canvas T-shirts. They have some really cool logos. So we invested in those. We also had poster sessions. And when I say infomercials, we not only recorded videos of people talking to their ease of transition, but we had them stationed in every different college. So people who were piloting were actually spearheading this, and they would do a demo of their course. So they would just be hanging out for 2 hours and watching people walk by and say, hey, are you a faculty member, student? Because students were also expected to pilot this. And as we heard before, we can't expect students to live in two worlds for very long, because one of our bigger challenges is, I think back to our first question, is students were constantly forgetting where their course was. They would log into Blackboard and not know that their course was piloted in Canvas. And the other issue that we had was that Canvas didn't work with older browsers in IE. And being that we're an aeronautical university, we service a lot of military students on board naval ships and whatnot. And as we all know, the government is definitely up to speed with their technology. So we didn't want to have people, put off by the challenge. So we would send special trinkets out to to those particular demographics of students. We also had a town hall in which our president helped to get on board, and he would log in from Singapore and give, town hall messages from afar. And then the last thing that we did, other than the poster sessions, is we would have people go into classes to act as mentors. So we would put them in a course if they were willing to pilot and feel a little unsure. We had the implementation team that would act as mentors.
Great. And if I could ask you three, just a quick follow-up question to this question. I think when you're experiencing a migration, when you're undergoing it, it seems to me like a prime opportunity to talk about quality instructional design. What makes up a good course? What does that look like? How did that take shape in your institutions, in your experiences with migration? Elspeth?
Well, we took the opportunity to create a Canvas template that we used. We hadn't used templates before, but Canvas has 5 home pages that you can choose, and it seemed like a good idea to be a little bit prescriptive, to try to get the courses more uniform. We have cats, and so and very few carrots. So nobody was being paid for anything, and we just had to try to show them how it made sense. We found that in Canvas, and I think a lot of people on this call today are moving to Canvas, that the navigation could be really slick and awesome, or it could be scary, and students would get completely lost. And part of our challenge was we were still speaking, the first time I did this, we were still speaking Blackboard, and then the second time we were still speaking Angel. And, it really is like thinking in a different language. So I think being a little bit prescriptive is a good idea. The other thing is we really did take the opportunity to redesign a lot of courses, not just the organization and the layout, although that was nice because we had some very sort of, antique layouts. But we also took the question to take time with faculty to and ask about the actual activities and assignments in the course, and see if lower stakes assessment would be a better deal, given that there were time savings in Canvas with the speed grader and rubrics and various other tools made doing more easier. Do you really need high-stakes multiple-choice tests online, or could the learning outcomes be achieved differently and perhaps more deeply? We've definitely had a lot of those conversations. And I would like to change the learning management system again. But I won't.
Mark, how would you answer that follow-up?
I think, initially, and again, our initial change was, almost 10 years ago. So the landscape was radically different. But we left Blackboard and went into Moodle, and it gave us new opportunities. So certainly with the new opportunities and the flexibility that Moodle gave us at the time, it provided that opportunity for reevaluation of pedagogy, reevaluation of how to use the tool. We've been essentially using the TPAC model. For those of you, I'll post it up here in the link here in a second. As we have conversations with faculty, at the outset, because it was a radical shift, it was a radical change of view for many faculty. We weren't going to impress upon them the need, well, by the way, you should be rethinking your course and rethinking your outcomes and everything like that. We wanted to get them into the new system, but then to establish those healthy relationships from more of a service perspective, saying, hey, we'll help you get there, but we want to have a chance to have coffee with you later on and have a conversation about, hey, did you see what this can do? What do you really want to do that you couldn't do before? Or what are you thinking about? And so I think that's, that was what we did then. And of course, now that conversation is much more prevalent in the arena that we are in, because there are so many new tools out there now as opposed to 5-10 years ago.
Thank you. And Wendi, how did you secretly inject the herbs and spices of quality instructional design in your migrations there?
I like the way that you worded that. That was very, very beautiful. At Embry-Riddle, we have a instructional design department that contains approximately 20 people, and we deploy the philosophy of backward course design, in which you have the outcomes dictate the assessment, and then you promote the activities. So within our IDD is the acronym for our design department. We're a very well-oiled machine. But I will agree, good training, when we have our residential campuses, they weren't expected to use the LMS as we would at Worldwide because we have such a large platform. So we gave everybody the demos, basically, of courses that were deemed as excellent, either by Blackboard previous or in a Canvas standard, or I'm trying to think of the term, it was the Quality Matters standards. And basically we just said, you can decide to employ this in your course or not, but we want to show you what the best of the best looks like. So much like, quote, the poster session, we would give them something to look forward. I will say, will state that one of the Canvas statements was, oh, it's so easy, you can migrate your Blackboard design. We found the migration to just be totally off, in which we had to redesign courses. We had no choice because the courses did not import, export, whatever, translate into Canvas design. So it was kind of like a blessing and a curse, because you had all of this work, but yet the blessing is we got to clean up all of the old courses from, say, 8 to 10 years, get rid of the garbage that was continually being, copied and pasted via the copies. Other things we did, we gave them templates, like we've heard before. I'm trying to remember anything else. We had, again, videos that I know that we had simulations. But the biggest thing to give to our faculty were the best exemplary courses that we could find, and have them explore those alongside the Canvas templates that were available as well.
Excellent. Thank you all. So I see we've got some great questions in the chat window coming up, and Julius and Mike are fishing through the chat window, and we'll bring up your questions after we're done with these few that we have. So question 3, once the migration was implemented, what unforeseen pitfalls, perhaps unforeseen, as well as unforeseen benefits did you encounter, and how were those addressed? Mark, you want to start us off with that one?
Sure. I think probably one of the earliest pitfalls was when publishers started building plugins into LMSes. And in our case, Moodle was nowhere on their radar. And it was Blackboard, it was the big players of the time. Mm-hmm. So I think that was one of the earliest challenges. I think one of the other challenges is when you move to an open source system, there are implementations, or I'm sorry, not implementations, but perspectives that the general end user, because when we think of open source, it means, oh, you can do anything you possibly want in the next 60 seconds to it and give me what I want. No, that's not quite the case. It is actually a lot of work. And it required a level of coordination and things and all that goes into managing essentially your own software, where we made collaborations. We had a collaboration with San Francisco State University and Humboldt State University. So I think that was one of the first issues. I think what followed up real quickly, probably within 2 years of that transition, was our staff that were on the 3 campuses, initial campuses, were very, very good, and they got gobbled up. They got stolen away from us. So each campus has lost primary players in their open source endeavors, if you will, and they went on to bigger and better things that, interestingly enough, the higher education, we don't pay as much as Google does, last I checked. We probably don't work as many hours as they do either, and we're certainly older than the average worker at Google. But I think those were some of the issues that really cropped up. That and the fact that it was a visually different environment. People were used to going into compartmentalized environments in Blackboard or even Canvas to a certain extent. And so it took a while for people to get used to, and people coming from, instructors coming from other institutions kind of went, what's this Moodle thing? I don't know what this is. I'm familiar with Blackboard. I'm familiar with WebCT, as the case may be. So I think those were the biggest issues. Excellent.
Elspeth?
Okay, well, I'll start with the good stuff. I think one of the unforeseen benefits is we now use our LMS in all courses across the university to do some things like Title IV attendance reporting, supporting Title IX athletes, and the LMS lets us do this. Canvas is pretty scalable with LTI technology. You can plug in a lot of things. We do our final course evaluations through it, so everybody uses it. And that was one of the things that some of us on the committee were saying, this could be a benefit, but it actually has become one. And I noticed in the notes somebody asked this. Our request for proposal process took about 18 months to put together, and we thought we were extremely thorough in going through. I mean, it was just pages and pages. Every single tool and feature and documenting it in the LMS. And I did this kind of the same way. I chaired the committee at both institutions, documenting like every feature so that we could be sure to have it demonstrated and play with it and make checklists and rubrics. And I think we did a decent job of that. But still, when it came, there were some things that didn't work as well. And Canvas is a great system. Most things work far better. And it's, it's smooth. And it's, you just look at things sometimes and you go, wow. We couldn't give an extra credit quiz. There wasn't an easy way to do that. We couldn't do some of the things we've done with peer review in Angel. We couldn't sort discussion boards last to first and first to last. And they were things that had kind of slipped through our RFP. And if anybody wants to see that checklist, I'd be happy to share it with you. And if anybody hasn't signed with Canvas, send me an email and I'll tell you what to ask for, because their request lists are quite long and they have a great community. But it is hard when you're waiting for a change to come to make the system function the way the system that you had 5 years ago functioned, and it's coming. People are impatient. So despite our thoroughness, things slip through the cracks.
You can't think of everything, right?
Yeah, well, I wish you could.
Wendi, pitfalls and benefits?
There are many on both sides, but I will state the pitfalls that we ran into. Our courses are very interactive in terms of blogs, wikis, and you have to purchase the Canvas course pack. And our implementation committee was made up about 22 people, and each representing a different area of the college, whether it was a residential campus or it was worldwide campus, a program chair, a department chair, a dean, faculty, adjunct, I mean, you name it, we had representation. And even with having that much representation, we too, like Elspeth, we did not identify certain items that truly needed to function. And so we decided after the pilot to purchase the Canvas course pack, and it still didn't work like we expected it to work. It was just very cumbersome. So we've since moved away from that and opted to redesign those elements or interactive elements a little bit differently. Another culture shock was the gradebook. We're used to, if you come from Blackboard, Moodle, Angel, always being able to insert a random rogue grading column. That doesn't happen in Canvas. Also the weighted totals. And if you implement, in my one course, I have a large lecture hall course of about 200 and some students, and we synchronize with my IT lab or Pearson components. When doing that, you cannot hide those synced columns, and inadvertently they throw off the percentages where your students are scratching their head in week 5 or 6 going, what grade do I have? But with that said, on the pro side, the gradebook is beautiful. It's organized. They understand what it is. You're able to go in and go to properties, add the weights, take out the weights. Roll call is beautiful for those of us who have to take attendance in course for the smaller courses. And the assessments are very easy to manage. You go into moderate and you can quickly just give a student a second option if something happened with technology. The reporting could be a little bit more robust, I would say. And then lastly, going back to a pitfall, but we've since changed a different system again. It required us to purchase a new system. Our overall university assessment, we were using Blackboard Analytics. And obviously for those of us who have Blackboard, that's a huge financial burden. And since we've done away with that, we saved money from Blackboard to moving to Canvas wholeheartedly, a much different subscription plan. So in that savings, we were able to purchase a new assessment tool, but now we're having to ramp up on that new assessment tool, as you can imagine. And again, I think it may have been Elspeth or Mark, but one just said, it's different. It's like speaking a different language. People and faculty in general wanted to know, how do I do it this way like I used to do this in Blackboard? And you have to tell them you cannot think that way anymore. You have to just put it aside and go, this is a brand new system. You're dealing with a dog now instead of a cat. And so again, it's for the good and for the bad. And then I told you about the implementation of the importing into Canvas did not go that smoothly.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So I'm going to turn to our esteemed chair, Julius, who has fishing through the chat window for some questions. So Julius, you have a good question for our panelists from the chat window?
Absolutely. And this one is directed right back to Wendy, who just told us all about many different benefits and pitfalls of Canvas. Sergio Costa from SUNY SPH was curious, did Canvas help run the faculty training sessions or help design them? And overall, are faculty satisfied with Canvas, given all these pitfalls and but benefits as well?
Oh, well, thank you. And hey, Sergio, how are you? I do believe you were my fellow presenter at Blackboard World, if I do remember, I think. The overall, faculty are extremely, extremely happy, and it's all been about the support. Canvas's support is just beautiful. You can call, you can chat, you can ask anything you want, and somebody's there to help them. At Embry-Riddle, we had to implement a new telephone architecture, so to speak. When you called in for help, we actually tailored a number to go straight to Canvas. So we'd ask the people on the telephone via a recording, does this have to do with Canvas specifically? Hit 1 to go here, hit 2 to go there, if it was yes or no. But all in all, just the ease of getting to work with the system. At the Center for Teaching and Learning that I was heading up at the time of this conversion, we were able to get a sandbox, so to speak, for our center, and we allowed faculty to go in and play with anything they wanted to play without any repercussion whatsoever. And I think in doing that, that took off the edge of, quote, the change factor. But the one thing that we noticed that faculty always forgot to do was hit the publish button. And that wasn't something. Canvas has an open architecture, so to speak. It's sort of open source, but they take our feedback and they have a continual change mechanism to update their LMS in a continual, like a I want to say in a real-time mode. And so that too, if they find something isn't working, we can go as a community and we can tell Canvas we need this fixed. And that too has definitely helped. So I hope I answered the question.
Yes, that was wonderful. Thank you very much.
Excellent. All right. And our past chair, Mike, has also been fishing through chat for some good questions. Mike, you got a question for our panelists?
Yes, I do. So this next question is about faculty resistance. If anybody on this panelist have experienced faculty resistance about any of these migration, please do share. And how did you deal or alleviate some of this resistance?
La résistance, c'est futile. Don't resist. I don't know. You can always have people who have trouble. I think if you meet people with a lot of empathy, it helps. And I think that the change, going to Canvas is an excellent system, and many things were better, although I disagree with Wendy. I think attendance isn't as good. But, you know, faculty saw that it was better. And so people are more willing to change when they see things are better. But who really loved Canvas were the students. And so because it was so app friendly and they could put it on their phone, and so that made the change really positive, because the faculty weren't being nibbled to death by ducks, by their students saying, you know, because students really, really liked it. Of course, there were people who griped and moaned a little bit. We made sure, and I think that Mark said it, we made sure to talk to Faculty Senate every time we could, and make sure that as many people were involved and engaged from across the institution, teaching different kinds of classes, online, face-to-face, big classes, little classes, all of that. But in that term when we changed, yeah, there were pain points. It wasn't horrible, but yeah, there were some days.
All right. Wendy, any areas of faculty pushback?
Of course, there always is going to be. You can't make everybody happy. I mean, it's just like a customer service satisfaction survey or whatnot. You just can't. But again, going back to my statements of the town hall, the assignment of mentorship, some of us, I mean, I was even fielding calls from some of our residential faculty where I would go in having the admin role in Canvas. I was able to get to their course, and I would share my screen via Skype for Business, and I would walk them through. And once they saw like the general idea of how to work with something, they kind of go, okay, and they'd hang up on you and go, go run with the ball. They were just like, okay, I don't need you anymore, thank you. The greatest joy is when you know that you can drop and drag from a Windows Explorer view or Mac, view, and just dump the files in. The funniest revelation is when I had a faculty member go into the public folder area, but not inside the course. And he kept saying, I dumped all my files in here. I don't see them. And as soon as I said, well, dear, you have to go into your course. And he's like, oh, okay. And I think he got embarrassed a little bit, but then he came back all the time to know that he had somebody he could rely on. So I became a little bit of an IT help desk support, but not for very long. And it was amazing once they were able to get quick answers from Canvas staff, how much they just assimilated to using Canvas. Again, it's just different. It's just like speaking a different language. But once they got over the initial shock that this is not Blackboard world anymore, that it is Canvas and it's totally new, the assimilation was quite simple and quick.
I'm seeing a trend here: shock, culture shock, resistance, right? So, Mark, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think, looking back on our transition, and Wendy's absolutely right. There always will be, the dirtiest four-letter, how many faculty does it take to change a light bulb? Change? Oh my God. Kind of thing. So, typically, we had our faculty evangelists, we had a lot of buy-in from our academic senate. So that went a long way. Given that, all that being said, when we found resistance, or we found people that were giving us headaches, if you will, we took each of them individually and kind of said, what is the problem? If it was something that we could dispatch one of our faculty advisors of that college to have a chat and say, oh, this is, by the way, this is how you do it. We would do that first, as opposed to having an IT person coming down and tell a faculty member how to teach, from the dark side, kind of thing. And then if we felt that wasn't going to work, what we would do, again, we would invite them in, say, hey, look, we're here to help you. What is it you're trying to do? Let us help you. And really give a level of concierge level service. When you're doing, to be interesting, it's interesting right now, even though we're, as I said, 10 years past our transition period, we have gone through multiple major system upgrades in Moodle where there have been radical changes in the UI. So we still continue to do that as part of our practice.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Another question for our panelists, and any of you three can chime in on this one. So we noticed during the meeting at the Pod Network conference in not San Francisco, whatever the name of that town was, where we were, that there were many institutions who had just switched or were about to switch to Canvas specifically. So do you have any special suggestions or resources that you can share that are specific to a move to Canvas that you can share with the audience if they're at an institution undergoing such a migration?
If I may, I'll chime in first. It's Wendy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
The one thing that we did, I think we really got it right this time, is we were very open about the change. We did a survey for faculty asking about the switch before we did any type of consideration. We had obviously our request for proposal, but we actually created a site on our regular portal in which anybody from the university, students to faculty to adjuncts to board of trustees, they could always go and look at our project timeline, and they could see what we were investigating, how the document was evolving. There was nothing that was kept secret from anybody at the university. And as we always have those late comers to the party, people are, scratching their head on August 1st, and courses begin August 20th, and they're like, Canvas? What's Canvas? We're switching? And even those latecomers to the party were able to get an overview within a couple hours of reviewing the documents, and it really, really helped. I truly believe. I mean, it listed all of the implementation members' names and contact information, so they could reach out at any time. So they didn't have to be put on the center stage. They could just secretly go to us if that's what they wanted to know. And there was nothing hidden from them. And we told them all about financials, what Blackboard did, what it didn't do. Both systems were good. Blackboard, we just needed a change. We had been using it for the last decade. So it was, a culture shock to some. But being transparent really helped.
Okay. Mark, Elspeth, anything to add there?
I have a few things to add about Canvas that, sort of bring something to the table. For us, Canvas allowed us to set up sub-accounts, which allowed us to sort of split our Canvas account in half being academic and the other half being everything else. And so it's used widely for a lot of things. We created a form. Anybody can request a group for anything. So student organizations have Canvas sites. Faculty committees have Canvas sites. It's really become ubiquitous because it's easier than getting shared space. It's in the cloud, so people like it better than SharePoint. If anybody's working with students, they want to use Canvas to do it because students go to Canvas and students like Canvas. So that was amazing. Canvas guides are really good. We did create a student orientation class that is just sort of more simpler and more linear. And we didn't want to do a lot of customization and a lot of our own documentation of training because they do a really good job. So we just want to link to most things, but we did kind of bring it in and put it in a format so that we knew that we had links to all the tools. Those become very, very helpful when you're designing classes because you just go and grab the link. This is how you attach a picture to a discussion board, for example. So those were a couple of good things. And then somebody kind of asked this. We did get an online class from Canvas. They gave us one, and we customized it. And so we do run an online version of our training once a month. And Yeah, I mean, we lived and learned a little bit on that because it was right at the beginning, but that was that. So I think those are some things that I didn't know about Canvas that might be helpful.
Thank you, Elspeth. Mark, anything to add there?
No, seeing we haven't switched to Canvas, we've looked at it a couple times, and it's a very interesting and very promising platform from somebody who's sitting outside. And if I had to choose to give somebody my money, they would be probably at the top of my list.
All right, great. So like Sarah Palin, I'm going to go rogue here and go back to Julius, who's got 3 more audience questions here.
And I'm actually going to try to combine 2 of them into one.
All right.
A twofer here, which is even before the migration, it seems like a lot of the success of this is due to what exactly you're migrating to. It should be, all the support is good, but it should also be an improvement upon the old system. So I guess the two-part question is, one, what were particular things that attracted you to the new platform versus the old one? Were there any particular triggers? And 2, how were the decisions made? Who was involved in the process, and how open was the process? And so if anyone wants to tackle that beast of a question, feel free to sink your teeth in right now.
I think I can answer quickly. We made this humongous RFP with this humongous rubric and then used that rubric as the basis for assessment. We had 7 vendors reply to our, it wasn't really, it was an invitation to negotiate, an ITN. We had 7 reply. Pearson was one of them, and they're out of the market now. That makes me very happy. And Mark, by the way, Moodle does things that Canvas doesn't do, and that frustrates me too. But anyway, we narrowed it down to 3. We brought those 3 on campus, and then we let the faculty choose. And price would have been an issue, and hosting would have been an issue if the faculty hadn't chosen the system that had the best price and the best hosting. So.
And as I sit here on this panel, it's just funny because all 3 of us come from different backgrounds in terms of our university style, flair, size. But yet, as you can tell, we've all done the same things, it sounds like, and we've all experienced very similar transitions. We did a request for proposal, and as I mentioned earlier, we had a large representative pool on our implementation team, from online to residential, from faculty, staff, you name it. We had these people on there because we even invited people from like registration, because we know students, they're going to be the ones who also need to buy in. If not more than us, it's them. It's their learning environment. And so we too narrowed it down to our top 3. And we had everybody come and do demos on our campus. So we not only did live demos on the residential, we taped those and broadcast those via our synchronous mechanisms. And it was just funny because we took a survey afterward. Everything we did was transparent, and every step along the way we asked them, what do you want? And there was only like 2 people were totally resistant to change. And on every survey it says, please don't switch from Blackboard. Please don't switch to Blackboard. But when you saw the scalability, but the LTIs that Canvas was able, they really advertised about the ability to work with all of these new tools. And with social media being what it is, our students expect instantaneous gratification of somebody talking to them. Canvas just was simple. And besides, they have a panda for a representative. Who wouldn't go with a panda? Come on. Just saying. He dances too if you go on their website.
Mark, anything to add there? How can you top that? Come on.
I can't top a panda. I have cat videos. What can I say? I can't top a panda. I think for Cal State Monterey, we benefited from a certain amount of timeliness we benefited from being part of a large system. There's deltas to that, as a few people sitting on the call probably can attest to. But when we made our initial change, the whole system went through an RFP process around LMSes. And so we were able to piggyback on that. So we didn't have to go and do a request for proposals. We didn't have a request for quotes or things of this nature. So that wasn't an issue. What was the primary issue for us was, again, it was about teaching and learning. And so, we had a fairly large group on campus, as well as at the chancellor's office, who was doing this work as well. So it was a pretty comprehensive process. So at the end of the day, we haven't done that work ourselves, unlike my colleagues on the phone here, or on the online. That being said, the next stage, where we go, is interesting. I know the CSU is starting another RFQ process to look at this now 10 years later. So it's going to be an ongoing process. I notice, just maybe I'm jumping the gun, but, price point is a consideration. Support is also a great consideration. Historically looking back, our price point with Blackboard wasn't egregious. What was unfortunate at the time was the level of support that we got. And having conversations with colleagues who have moved to, and as certainly we can attest to today, Canvas places a premium on support. And I think that's really the more important piece, which is I can pick up the phone and I can get an answer, or I can get it fixed. And I think those are the issues that really matter in the long term.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to backtrack just a little bit and talk about timeline for a second. This is a super important concept when undergoing a migration, right? So we're talking about from the first day where you scratch your head and say, hey, we might want to think about changing to another learning management system, to that last day when you're up and running and it is your learning management system. What do you have to add to this point? How does timeline impact student and faculty users in general? Anybody want to take that?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I think each institution, you have your own timelines. You know when your up times are, or your busy times. You know when your down times are. I can't stress enough giving yourself ample time to look at everything possible, and then be ready to, as Elizabeth, talked about, it's like, you can't guess, you can't put everything on paper and think it's going to be there. So, finding the appropriate time to switch and move, you should expect to have overlap of LMSes if you're actually moving from one to another. There will always should be an overlap, and each institution has to look at their academic schedule and look at all the planning. And I'll just add this one little thing. Don't forget about vacations that tend to happen during the summer. If all your technical staff and your instructional designers, and who else is usually gone during the summer? Faculty. So you have to think about keeping some bookends there somehow whenever you set up your timeline. Say, we have to make sure that this is this is a huge thing. This is like saying we're picking up and moving our campus 3 miles to the east. This is the same impact that you're going to have physically versus digitally. And that the provost needs to understand that. So when faculty come back during planning weeks or at the end of term when you have planning weeks, those have to be important stakeholders in your professional development opportunities and things of this nature for faculty.
Thank you. I want to turn to Mike real quick to check to see if he has any additional questions from the chat window.
I have one last question here, George.
Go for it, Mike. Yeah.
So this is from Jim Julius from Maricosta College, and he has a question about backwards compatibility. His question is, can you guys speak to the approaches to migration of particular courses that may have been challenging due to structure, depth, reliance on features of the prior system?
I guess I'll start us off, but as I spoke to earlier, our migration, we were told it was going to be seamless, and so we exported all of our Blackboard courses to terabytes of a drive, and when we went to import them, none of the content came over eloquently at all. And so we found all kinds of broken links. Additionally, the wikis, the blogs, none of those translated well into Canvas because we didn't purchase the Canvas course pack. We were still undecided. And even if we would have done so, it still wouldn't. So it was a blessing and a curse because we knew that we had outdated data. It was a good time to do it, but it's not the appropriate time when you're under such a time frame. You know, we were doing this in 1 year and 1 year only, where we were starting, you know, our pilot started in October, and we asked any and everybody if they wanted to volunteer, and we didn't turn away anybody. If they wanted to change their course, all they had to do is let us know, and they were given a 30-day window to decide. And about a week up into the course, they could decide not to partake. But when they saw their course that would come in, and it was all distorted, a lot of people did start to panic, I must admit. But we quickly would reconstruct it for them with a handful of our instructional designers. So, I mean, it's definitely something that has to be calculated and timed out. And frankly, you have to give people a way out if they don't want to proceed. And then those people would have to do the pilot at the later time. I hope that answered it.
I'm just going to add something. We didn't let everybody into our pilot. We put in a call, and we sort of took applications, and then we vetted them closely, and we picked people. We picked a variety of types of classes, but we also picked people who were very comfortable in chaos. And we did that because in the prior migration I did at the community college, we had 2 people in there who were really good instructors, but they were not good in chaos. And they became a full-time job for certain people. I think that it was interesting. I saw in the chat, I couldn't exactly see who said it. Somebody said the ISMCC cartridge should come in well. Coming from Angel, we actually imported everything. The ISMCC didn't work well. Everything worked pretty well importing it as a Blackboard cartridge. So we imported everything that way. And there were instances where like images didn't come through in tests, and I mean, it wasn't in every course, it wasn't in every instance, because Angel had a lot of garbage. When Angel courses copied, they just copied and copied and copied files in the background with a lot of code and garbage. And, you know, Canvas had trouble pulling some of that over. But coming from Angel, it worked fairly well, although we did run into the same situation that Wendi mentioned earlier, where people would see what it looked like, and then they would see what Canvas could do, and then they kind of say, well, I should just do it over. It's not that, it's not going to take that much time. And it was, it was a more organized way just to re-upload files than to migrate. But I think you need to be able to tell faculty that it's going to migrate, that they're not going to have to do all their work over.
Right. And I don't mean to seem like it's, Canvas, the transition was so terrible. A lot of it had to do with our previous design, how the courses were designed. And again, without having that course pack, Canvas migrates everything into a web page. So everything on or in your Moodle or in your Blackboard course would come over as a page. And that's not, it could have been an attachment. So you'd have like 500 more pages added, and it was like a beautiful disorganized chaos. So it was just probably better off to delete the pages and then just re-import them. Like you said, a clean copy. And a lot of people took that route, that we just said a clean copy is better, just to restructure it. And a lot of our faculty needed to be trained on the idea of module-based rather than content-based, where a lot of the residential, between online and residential people would have folders that would link to all kinds of stuff. And then when it imported into a module, they were like, oh my God, what is this thing called a module? So again, I don't mean to be poo-poo on Canvas in that regard, but again, starting over, it was just so much cleaner. And from all of the import and export from the years past, you had a lot of garbage in there anyways. And Blackboard was notorious when you would copy course content, it would create all of those old files.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that's going to be the last word. So our time is up together. Please join me in thanking our august assembly of panelists there, Wendi, Mark, and Elspeth, for sharing their time and their expertise. We're going to be posting a recording of this and making it available to anyone who signed up for the webinar. And we'll also be coming up with a list of additional topics that we'll be doing throughout the year. So thank you, everyone, and have a very good week. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye. That was fun.
It was.
That was great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.